Today, I'm bringing to the table a conversation about self-love and how self-love is based on action and not feeling. I learned this. I mean, last year was very eye-opening to me when it comes to self-love, because when you hear this word, what comes to your mind? Think about your definition for a second of self-love. When you think of a world in which you love yourself, what does that mean? For me, for the longest time, it was very much attached to appearance and to feelings. It was the idea of looking myself in the mirror and loving what I saw, of being, with a certain type of body or with a certain type of hair, face, whatever. And then the second piece, and this was the tricky one for me, okay? Because for me, I would think of self-love as just the feeling, like the love that I feel for myself. But last year was really eye-opening to me when it comes to self-love. And I learned, and this is how I define it today, that self-love is actually based on action and decisions. And it can be more practical than we think. I do believe now that once you see self-love as action and as the sum of certain actions, then you create the feeling. Whereas in the past, I would just be like, okay, if I change my body this way, then I'm going to love myself more. And if I feel this certain way, then my life is going to change completely. Okay, how about you change your life first and then you start loving yourself? Maybe that's an angle, right? So this is what I want to talk about today, about the action part of self-love. So the first thing that we have to understand, the process of loving yourself is a long process, is a long one. It's not overnight. You're not going to wake up, oh my gosh, I am, my favorite person on the planet. Maybe you will, and I hope that you do. But I feel like sometimes, and for most of us, this takes time, because this takes knowing who we are. This takes not being so attached to other people's validations. And this is the process of life, of maturing. And when we start this journey of self-love, or even, understanding the way that we perceive ourselves, we started as teenagers in a moment that validation is all that matters. And that validation, we have to understand, is very much connected to appearance. The moment that you start going through puberty, you start attracting the opposite sex attention. And the people that attract the most attention connect their values to, okay, I'm wanted. I'm pretty, so I'm wanted, right? I don't know if I'm being able to explain it the way that I want, but when we understand that when we're younger, validation from the group is the thing that matters the most, especially validation from the opposite sex, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with this or not, this is the reality. As you grow older and as you mature, you start to realize that, yes, validation is important, but I care more about validation coming from the right people than just anybody and, just whatever group. Then you start being more kind to yourself, and you start realizing things about yourself that you value and in the past weren't as beautiful in your opinion. So the first thing that I want to say is that this is a lengthy process. This is a long process. Therefore, you have to be patient, even if you don't like it. I know it's hard, especially when you're going through a period of life that you're like, I really don't like myself. I know it's really hard, but I need you to trust the fact that it's a process and you're going to get to the other side. So that's the first thing. And what self-love means and what it relies on when you're a teenager is very different than when you're an adult. Understanding this, let's focus on the action piece. Let's focus on behavior. Let's understand what actions and behaviors I'm talking about. The first thing is words. You're going to understand that your words have power. The way you address yourself has power. The way you talk about your life has power. It has a weight. So if you're a person who every time you talk about yourself, you talk in a negative tone, that you downplay your accomplishments, like you talk about yourself in a way that you would never talk about somebody else and about someone that you love. But for some reason, when it comes to yourself, you label yourself the worst possible names. You are going to realize and you're going to understand right now, right this second, from now on, that your words have power. And you're going to start being more mindful and more careful with the way that you address yourself. Stop talking shit about yourself. The more you address yourself in a negative way, the more that becomes part of your identity. It's not that you're going to ignore the things about you that are not as polished, but you're going to stop being your worst enemy, my love. What is this? Like, how, how do you talk about yourself this way? Words matter. That's the first thing. The second thing, you're going to invest in knowing yourself. I know this sounds very abstract, but you're legitimately and literally going to start investing in knowing yourself. Use whatever tools that you like. Go to therapy, I don't know, use whatever tools you like. But how can you love something that or someone that you don't know? You have to know who you are. And sometimes, here's the tricky part. Sometimes when you do the work of knowing yourself and getting to know yourself, which by the way, is the work of your life, you're going to find out things that you don't like as much about yourself. So it might sound counterintuitive because you're going to start to surface some things that are not as pretty about you. But the only way to not be controlled by these things and to not be defined by these things is to face them. Once you do learn how to integrate these aspects into your life, then you build a completely different relationship with yourself, and you have the courage to show up wholly and to show up, as yourself, which is key for loving who you are. The other thing that you're going to invest on, and this is more like invest in time and being aware of it, self-confidence. Self-confidence. What self-confidence is? Just, again, look at myself in the mirror and saying, yeah, I got this. I'm a badass woman and I'm amazing. No. Self-confidence is not knowing that everyone will like you, that you're likable, and stuff like that. Self-confidence is knowing that you'll be okay if they don't. It's knowing that whatever life throws at you, you got your back. Self-confidence is knowing that you can rely on yourself. Do not underestimate the power of self-confidence, and self-confidence through this lens. Again, not just looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, you got this. Do that as well. But you know how you build self-confidence? It's first by honoring the commitments that you make with yourself. You can't just, say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and then comes the time to do X, Y, and Z, you never do it. The message that you're sending to yourself is that you cannot rely on yourself, is that, you have this feeling of, oh, I cannot accomplish anything. The moment that you start showing up to yourself, honoring the commitments that you make with yourself, honoring your word with yourself, which needs to mean something. Once you start doing that, you start building up that self-confidence. You start building up that feeling of, okay, I got this. And this feeling, my love, trust me when I'm saying this feeling is, in my opinion, is like the foundation for self-love. Really. Knowing that no matter what happens, you got your back and you're going to show up for yourself. And in order for you to build self-confidence, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to never slack and always do every single thing that you say you're going to do, because life happens. In a given day, you're going to come back from work and you had this list of things that you said you're going to do, but you're not going to have the energy or, you just don't want to do it. Fine. It's going to happen. It's not that you have to every single day be perfect, but you have to start being more selective with the commitment that you make with yourself and committing to things that you're actually going to do, to start building that internal muscle and that internal understanding of who you are and your ability to do what needs to be done. So to honor your commitments with yourself, you have to be selective so that you don't overcommit, meaning that you have to also be very selective with what you say yes to and what you say no to. Your yeses and no's have to be very, very precious to you. In order to build self-confidence, if you say yes to too many things, you're not going to do them. So you're going to feel like you cannot count on yourself, right? So you have to be comfortable saying no. You have to be comfortable not doing things that don't align with what you don't value so that you can be the person who does what matters, right? So be very selective with yes and no. And then the other thing to build self-confidence is to stop relying on your emotions. As an adult, and I talk about this all the time, I say this in every episode, and I really try to live by this. If you rely on your emotions for everything, you're not going to see progress in any areas of your life, because there's so much that you cannot control that trigger an emotion in you, that if you only do things when you feel your best self, when you feel motivated, when you feel happy, when you feel excited, you don't build consistency. So how can you rely on yourself if you're just moved by emotions? Emotions are messengers, they're signals, but they're not dictating what you should and shouldn't do. You have that power of saying, okay, I feel sad today, but this thing matters. And I told myself I was going to do this, and I understand the importance of this because I'm selective, so I don't just commit to anything. So I'm going to do it anyway. Again, I don't want this to sound like a life coach conversation, like be realistic. There are going to be days that, yeah, you're not going to do it, and that's fine. Don't hate yourself for it. You got to find that balance. The last point about building self-confidence, which is, remember, the foundation for self-love, or one of the foundations for self-love, is overcoming your limiting beliefs. It sounds super romantic. It sounds super coachy. It sounds whatever it sounds. But it really sucks when you don't do things because you told yourself a certain story that plays against yourself. We all have to be realistic. We all have to see life for what it is. But at the same time, something that we all do is to build certain patterns of thought based on previous experience, previous things that happened, and then we start transforming these stories into limiting beliefs. So I say, I would love to be the person who does X, Y, and Z, but that's not for me. Oh, I would love to do, to be more extrovert, to talk to more people, to expand my network, but it's just not me. Oh, but it's too hard. Oh, but I don't come from a family that X, Y, and Z. Oh, because this, because that. So we set our own limits, right? And once you start challenging those limits in a controlled environment, and I'm going to give some examples, you start feeling a sense of accomplishment. And that feeling is huge for self-confidence. And it's in small doses. It's really, really small accomplishments, but that make you say, oh my gosh, I did something that I thought was impossible. And you don't have to do them just because. I'm talking about the things that you actually care about and that matter to you, but that you restrain yourself from doing because of a story that you tell yourself. So when it comes to building confidence, and this is again grounded in action and behaviors, not in feelings, exposing yourself to these things in a controlled environment can be extremely helpful. I'll give you an example. So I remember when I moved here to the US, I was like, I need to make friends. I want to put myself out there. This is important to me. I don't know anyone here. And I'm not the type of person that naturally I just start talking to people in places that I don't know anyone. That freaks me out. I don't like it. I completely get into my shell and I can't do it. So I remember that I would put myself in these situations like a workout class or whatever. And I would go home and be like, okay, I didn't talk to anyone. I wanted to talk to someone and I didn't do it. And I would feel so shitty about myself. It's something so silly, so small, but that would impact my self-confidence because I'm like, I cannot do for myself what needs to be done. And that really bothers me. So I'm like, okay, maybe I start small. Maybe I say hi to one person instead of thinking that, oh, I cannot do this because I'm not extrovert. Instead of like falling for this idea, let me just do something very small. Let me talk to one person. And then I would do that every now and then. And then I would leave the workout class or whatever place that I was at so happy with myself. And that feeling would multiply. So I would leave the workout class with this feeling. I would feel more confident to do other things and I would feel better about myself and feel like, okay, I can rely on myself. So when I say control environment is an environment that there is less risk or less exposure to that one thing that you're afraid of doing, but that will help you build this confidence. So this is like, again, a very silly example, but part of building self-confidence is actively trying to overcome your limiting beliefs. Okay, I promise you, you're going to feel so much better about yourself. And do it in small doses, right? I hear so many people say, oh, I want to start running, for example. And they're like, oh, but I can't run more than 30 minutes. Fine. So then you're not going to run at all and you're going to feel bad about yourself because, yeah, I'm jealous of people that can do it. It's just not for me. I'm not built this way. You can just run 5 minutes. That's fine. Come back and acknowledge that you did it. Say, okay, yesterday I didn't run 5 minutes. Today I did. That's awesome. Again, you see how like building up self-confidence is in small little actions that you do. Okay. So we talked about self-confidence. We talked about self-knowledge or self-awareness, knowing yourself. The other point is attention. Where you put your attention, you put your energy. If your attention is going into other people's lives all the time and the things that you lack, the things that you're not, the places that you haven't been, you're gonna feel the worst about yourself. Be very mindful about where you place your attention. When you obsess over somebody else's life, you just forget about your own. And when you go back to your life, let's say you're on your phone and you spend 5 hours looking at other people's lives, you go back to your reality and you're like, oh my God, I don't want this. I want that. Right? So when you start losing focus on what matters and you start placing that energy in comparing yourself to other people, that is going to mess up your self-confidence, your sense of self, your identity. So start being aware about where you spend your time and your attention. The other point about building self-love, which is an action or behavior, is relationships. Relationships. Who do you have in your life? Because that is going to help set the bar to what's good, what's bad, what's possible, what's not. If being who you are is good, it's not good. So many times in life, we surround ourselves with people that make us feel bad about ourselves or that their habits and the way that we behave when we're around them is not good for us. We do this so many times in romantic relationships, friendships. So if you don't like who you are right now and you don't like your life right now, I advise you to look around and look at the people who you have next to you. Not to blame them, but once you are in an environment and you're in a group, the way that group behaves is likely the way that you behave as well, and you bring up certain things in each other. When you have an ideal of who you want to become and you try to find people who match that, those values, that energy, even if you're not there yet, but they are, that's going to completely change the way that you see yourself and you see life. Be very selective with who you let in. So finding the right people is also an action and it also impacts your self-love. Last but not least, because I do have to talk about this, is your body. You have to move your body. This is also an action of self-love and that impacts the way that you feel about yourself. And I'm not talking about appearance. I'm not talking about you having to have a certain type of body, but your body was not meant to be in one place and, stuck. You're not supposed to just be sitting in your desk the whole day and then going from your desk to your bed. Go move your goddamn body. I'm not even joking. Like, move your body. I swear to God, you're going to feel better about yourself. Go on a walk. Invite a friend to go to workout class. I don't care. Whatever works for you. Even if it's for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes, move your body. The way that you see yourself and the love that you feel for yourself also starts or also involves the way that you treat your body, which is the way that you exist in this world. So move your body. That's it. My loves. So self-love is really much more than just a feeling or just appearance. It is the decisions that we make every single day. And we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to show up for ourselves every single day in the way that we want to. But at least we have to connect to a different definition of what this word means and stop overlooking the actions piece, thinking that it's just a matter of feeling and that this feeling is magically going to show up one day. What if this feeling is a consequence of your actions? Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode at the Adults Table.